From Hertfordshire back to here, the theme of the Horticultural Expo in China is Live Green, Live Better. And with me now to discuss how we can do that through urban farms and gardening is Brent Kim. Brent is a Programme Officer for the Centre of a Livable Future at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Thanks so much for joining me, Brent. First of all, urban farming. I mean, we all know what comes to mind in our head, but what is it and why is it so important?
Urban farming is growing crops, sometimes even raising animals in cities. It's happening on places like vacant lots, parks, even rooftops, greenhouses. And when we're talking about urban farming, that's primarily growing food for sale. And we can also think about urban gardens, where a community of neighbors will come together to grow food in a shared space. And it's important for a lot of reasons. I think some of the most important reasons for urban farming and gardening are to keep our cities healthy, green, and cool.
So you mean by the plants or by the food we create? Because, you know, a lot of my neighbours, for example, plant vegetables. There's cooperatives around Washington, D.C. You see it growing up all the time. It's lovely to look at. But can it actually feed a city?
It's a great question. I don't think they're actually designed to feed cities. So in our work with urban farms and gardens in cities like Baltimore and Chicago, well, it takes an enormous amount of land to feed an urban population center where you have maybe hundreds of thousands or even millions of people.
Yeah.
There was a recent study done where they looked at all of the land in New York State to see how many people that our farmland could feed. And it couldn't even feed less than half of the city. So when we're talking about feeding cities, we need an enormous amount of farmland, and most of that food is coming from either rural or what we call peri-urban land around the periphery of a city.
So, you know, why do it? Because, you know, it's expensive. It's not always the most productive. You go to farmers markets, they're beautiful, the quality is excellent, but sometimes the prices are very high.
It's not so much about feeding people. Urban farms and gardens play a very important role, for example, in improving access to fruits and vegetables, often in neighborhoods where the people living there might not otherwise have access to a grocery store. We have a place in Baltimore City called Filbert Street Garden. It used to be a vacant lot covered in trash, and the neighborhood there worked together over the years to transform it into a thriving green space where the community can come together and gather around a common cause. They have educational workshops where children can learn about bees and even pet the chickens. And I think for a lot of urban residents, that urban farm or garden might be their only regular exposure to learn about nature. And I don't know what could be more important than that.
Yeah, it's a lovely concept. And also these food deserts have been particularly bad when it comes to health. So in terms of urban farming and where we go from here, because the concept has caught on, but what are the shortcomings that need to be overcome if it's sustainable in the future? I mean, you see property prices rising all over the city. A vacant lot, whether it's growing vegetables or not, is always very tempting, isn't it?
Sure. Well, one concern that we always try and make people aware of is that, well, first I want to preface this by saying that I think the benefits of urban agriculture far outweigh any of the risks. That said, we promote people doing it, but we want to make sure that people are growing food safely. So urban soils can harbor heavy metals, such as lead, chromium, and arsenic that could be present as a result of heavy vehicle traffic, coal-fired power plants, or even lead paint. So we like to make sure that before starting a growing project, people are aware of these and that they take 3 important steps. The first is to always know how your land was used before you start growing on it. So if it used to be a gas station, that's probably not a good place to start your farm. Second, we want to make sure that people always test their soil for concentrations of heavy metals. And third, we always recommend that just people take some precautionary steps to make sure they're not exposed to anything that might be there. For example, don't start your garden next to a busy roadway. You wash your leafy greens, peel your root vegetables, and always remove your boots before entering your home so you don't track contaminated soil into the house where children could be exposed.
We talked about the vegetables. What about the animals? I actually live next door to people in New York who decided to raise chickens. Wasn't the most pleasant experience of my life. Chickens get up early. You know, there is some problems having animals and, you know, in a city.
Yeah, I myself actually helped build an urban chicken coop, and I live next to
it's all your fault.
a neighbor. You can blame it all on me. I do have a neighbor who has some chickens, so it's different city by city, but this is actually a question for the zoning commission of a city.
Right.
In the city of Baltimore, the zoning requirements state that you can have chickens, but you can't have a rooster. That's key for making sure we all get a good night's sleep.
Yes, you don't want to be woken up by that proverbial rooster. It's a fascinating subject. I hope you come back and talk to us more about this, because we really have to think about the future when it comes to sustaining our cities in different ways. I really appreciate it, Brett. Thank you
It's my
so
pleasure,
much.
Nathan. Thank you.
Appreciate it.